Okay, to start on our value scale worksheet, we're going to need a pencil and a blender. You can use a regular pencil, a wooden one, not a mechanical one, or if you'd like to borrow one of the shading pencils I have in class, you're welcome to do that too. The difference between the pencils is that this tends to build up the color faster, and it's going to be a darker pencil than your normal wooden pencil. All right, let's get started. So this value scale is asking me to replicate this scale on the left. So to do that, I just need to look at the shade and then try to copy that. One tip I have for you that is also in the back of my packet is to lay your pencil on its side instead of holding it straight up and down. So I'm gonna start with this one, the lightest shade. And since it's so light, I'm just gonna barely touch my pencil to the paper, barely have any pressure on it, and add my pencil value that way. It's okay if you go a little bit outside of your box. You can always go back and erase and clean up after. Okay, now that I have my value down, I'm gonna take my blender and blend out that color. When you're blending, it's good practice to work in circular motions rather than back and forth or side to side. This will help blend and erase those pencil lines faster. That way you have a smoother looking box. Okay, I noticed that this value is lighter than the value I made. If I wanted to kind of go in and lighten it, you could take a kneaded eraser or even a regular eraser and kind of gently lift some of that pencil. I'm just kind of dabbing my eraser on my paper and kind of lifting some of that pencil lead off. Okay, I think that looks a little bit closer. So again, I'm just going to go back in and kind of blend out the uneven areas. Try to get a little bit more even value. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing for all of these boxes, trying to match that color on the left with the one I'm doing on the right. Each one I go down, I'm gonna have to press a little bit harder with my pencil so I get a darker color. I do notice and want to recommend that you work lighter. You can always add more pencil lead in, because I noticed that the blender tends to add a little bit of darkness to your boxes as you're working. This last one, I don't think I need to blend out, because as I'm drawing and coloring it in, I can see that I can create a pretty smooth shade just by making sure I'm pressing consistently through the whole box. So I think it's good without shading. The last thing I'm going to do is erase the extra pencil lead that escaped my boxes. That way it looks like I kind of took my time and focus on making this neat, even if it is just to practice. Okay, flip the page, and the cone, cylinder, and sphere practice. So basically, you're going to apply the same value scale to the cone, cylinder, and sphere. I think the easiest place to start is the sphere and work your way over. So it's kind of weird, we're working right to left instead of left to right. If you want, you can use the sphere, cylinder, and cone shading guides. They're posted on Google Classroom, and there are a couple of copies in the classroom if you need to look at them. This kind of helps you see how exactly you can go about shading it in case you want a step-by-step instead of a video. So you guys don't have to draw your circle because it's already there for you. I am gonna skip ahead then to step number 3. So determine where your light source is coming from. And the example here, it's coming from the left. So everything is light on the left and gets darker on the right. You can follow that example. If you want to do something different, like I'm going to do, you can do a sun on the right and then shade everything on the left. So it recommends that you create a really light, curvy diagonal line. This is simply a guide for when you know to start blending out. So from here over, this is where it's going to get really, really light. But from here to the left, it's going to be dark. So I'm going to start by adding some darker value. I'm noticing that the value in the example circle is about as dark as the darkest value on my value scale. So it needs to be pretty dark. As I'm working towards this curvy line, I'm pressing lighter and lighter with my pencil because I really just want this edge to be dark and the rest to get lighter and lighter. Okay, I'm going to start blending. So with circular motions, I'm going to start blending out my values. Okay, looking at this sphere right here, I see that there's a little bit of a shadow around this edge, even though the sun is right here. That's just because it's a 3D form, and so it would have some sort of shadow on this side. So I'm just going to use the extra pencil lead on my blender since it's a light shadow. And I can always go and darken it up if I need to. In this guide, it says to draw an oval where you want your lightest part to be. I find it easier just to kind of eyeball an oval as I'm shading. That way I don't have to worry about going to erase that oval or accidentally making that part darker because I already put pencil lead there. So I'm just going to blend my pencil lead up into kind of an oval shape. Okay, now my sphere should be pretty smooth, so I'm going to make sure to kind of go back in where I already went over and re-go over it, so that way I see a nice smooth transition from each value. Okay, my highlights little oval here got kind of covered up a little bit, so what I'm going to do is take my eraser and kind of erase that part out again, so that way I can see that highlight in my sphere. The last thing I need to do is add a shadow. So I'm going to flip to the back of this. This guide tells you not to do a round circle shadow, but rather more of an oval shape. So you're going to lightly sketch out that shape first and then work on blending it out. So if my sun's right here, my shadow for my sphere is going to be on the left, about like that. Okay, the darkest part of my shadow is going to be right underneath the sphere, and it's going to kind of fade out as I work out from here. Almost like I'm matching the value from my sphere and the shadow, so it's almost like they blend into each other. So I'm trying to go over the very edges to make it look nice and fuzzy, kind of like a shadow would be. And I think I'm done. Okay, I'm gonna move on to my cylinder. Okay, again for my cylinder, you need to decide where you want your sun to be. I'm just going to continue and put my sun on the right. So that means that my left side is going to be the darkest. If you're following on the guide, you can skip ahead to step 9 and go on from there, and that will be the right step for you. Now, if you're right-handed and you're working right to left, you're probably going to get some pencil lead on your hand. If you want to avoid that, you can take a piece of paper like your guide and put it down over where you just drew, so that way you don't get pencil lead all over your hand. Okay, you're gonna put your darkest value down on the opposite side, away from the sun. And slowly start to let it pressure as you work towards the middle. And as I get towards the middle, I'm going to be very, very light because I want to be able to blend out this value that I put down. Okay, when I get to the middle, I'm gonna stop there. That way I make sure I don't go too far. I can always come back and add in more, but it's harder to take it away. Okay, I'm gonna start blending out this shadow. The cylinder is a little bit more challenging than the sphere because it also has another plane, so it has a side and then the top to worry about. So the top of the sphere is actually going to have a shadow casting from the sun, and then it's going to get lighter. So I'm going to work from here, having a darker value, and then it's going to get lighter as I work towards the left. I think I went a little too dark on the top of this cylinder, so I'm going to take out some of that dark value with my eraser. And I'll blend that back out. Because it's on the top, it's not going to be quite that dark. I didn't really think of that when I started off with blending this. Last but not least, the cone. Okay, so I'm going to slide this over, hide my cylinder. Okay, so the cone, again, you don't have to draw your cone. You can skip ahead to the second page. Okay, again, first determine where your light source is. Mine's going to be on the right here, so I'm going to start adding value to the right side. And then instead of adding values straight up and down, my shadows are going to be on diagonal. So I need to kind of follow the shape of this cone. I notice that my shadow should get a little bit wider at the bottom. So it's kind of like I'm shading in a triangle. Last part of my cone is the shadow. I noticed that the shadow for the cone should be about a triangle. And it's kind of coming at an angle. Mine's going to run off the page a little bit. But you should have a line coming from each side of the cone. It's kind of hard to get the right angle. This is why the cone is kind of the trickiest, because you have to get the right angle. If you want to, using a ruler would be a great idea, so that way you get the shadow at the right angle and then you get a pretty straight shadow. The cylinder shadow kind of comes straight out from each corner at the bottom at an angle. Okay, and I'm all done. So those are my 3 examples. They're not perfect, but they're great practice, and I learned a lot from just practicing doing these forms. Hope you enjoy.